Imagine getting rejected 4 times in a row so brutally that even the background NPCs stopped cheering for you. That's Joro, the main character with the ultimate background character vibe. But instead of sulking in the corner, our boy decided to level up his game and unlock his final RIZZ God mode. From zero attention to rizzing every girl around him, this is the story of how Joro turned heartbreak into a revenge for romance. In the beginning of the story, we see that on his way to school, Joro bumps into his childhood friend Himawari, the human embodiment of sunshine and chaos. They walk to school together, and when they reach class, Joro meets his best bro, Teo Oga, also known as Sunchan, the school's baseball champion and Mr. Perfect. Sunchan sees them and smirks. Joro walking to school with Himawari again? Someone's getting cozy. Joro panics faster than an anime protagonist caught looking at fan service. Huh? No, it's not like that. She's the one following me. I'm just being a good citizen. Meanwhile, Himawari overhears that little gem of a statement and goes full anime glare mode. Her smile vanishes faster than Joro's dignity. Just when the awkwardness peaks, the queen of perfection herself walks in. Sumireko Sanshokuin, the student council president, and her friends called her Cosmos. She politely asks, "Kisaragi-kun, could I trouble you for a small favor?" Before Joro can even answer, Sunchan starts teasing again like, "Oh, the prez asking you for favors? Someone's popular." Meanwhile, Himawari's face turned into absolute rage mode and then she storms out of class. Cosmos, being the calm one, tilts her head and says softly, "Maybe Aoi doesn't like me." Later in the evening, both Joro and Cosmos were doing council work, but just then she hit him with a bomb and asked if he is free on Saturday. A real date, not a help me with paperwork kind of date. Joro's heart did somersaults as if someone had kicked it from behind. He nods, pretending to play it cool, but inside he's like, "Let's go." After 16 years of NPC energy, I finally unlocked romantic route. Later, on Saturday their date goes well and at the evening the sun was setting perfectly. The breeze felt like it was scripted by a rom-com director, and Cosmos casually invited Joro to sit beside her. Joro puffed up his chest, thinking, "Yes, this is it. My life is finally happening." And then she dropped the other bomb. She had a crush on Sunchan, Joro's best friend. Of course she did. Of course. Joro wanted to scream, cry, and run in all directions at once. Cosmos had been crushing on Sunchan ever since she saw him rally the baseball team after a brutal loss, and now she wanted Joro to set them up. His soul left his body right then and there, but a little voice whispered, "You can't leave her hanging, dummy." The next day, Joro tried to recover by spending time with his childhood friend, Himawari, as he had turned her down yesterday, holding out hope for something special with Cosmos, but now he had no choice but to distract himself. Himawari, being her energetic self, immediately noticed he was down and decided to drag him into a full-blown day of chaos. They went out, played games, ate a fancy meal, and Joro even bought her a gift, trying to act like he was enjoying himself instead of moping over his emotional wounds. By the end of the day, they were sitting on a bench cooing again. Here Joro thought that now finally it's time that my childhood friend will confess to me. But just then Himawari casually confessed that she, too, was in love with Sunchan. Joro froze, his head spun, his stomach flipped, and he questioned every life choice that had led him to this moment. Both girls, Cosmos and Himawari, were in love with the same guy, and now they both wanted Joro to be their wingman. That night, Joro's room turned into a battlefield. Papers flew, books tumbled, and Joro screamed into the void, realizing that his plan to be a low-key, nice guy had completely failed. He was invisible to the girls he liked, and nothing in his pathetic little life made sense anymore. But then, a glimmer of inspiration appeared. If both girls liked the same guy, maybe there was a way to swoop in and steal one of them. Maybe he could still be the hero of his own story. The next morning, Himawari caught up with him ready to strategize their plan. She hits Joro as usual with a punch, and he greets her with a good morning. However, he was still angry at her for yesterday. He sighed and admitted that he was also helping Cosmos as she's in love with Teo too. At school, he walks into class and Sunchan asked him about Himawari, but he replied that it's not necessary that they always come together. Just then Himawari enters the class trying to act cool but fails miserably, and Joro smoothly tries to excuse himself using a student council work excuse, leaving them to chat. Later, he meets Cosmos in the council room and revealed his double agent status. Once she was convinced he was on her side, Joro spilled the plan. But when they bumped into Sunchan in the hallway, Cosmos panicked and blurted out that she only wanted to be friends. Joro swooped in again, spinning some nonsense about how getting to know Sunchan would help with her duties. Somehow he sneaks away, leaving them alone as his plan. At lunchtime, Joro ducked into the library, desperate for a break from the chaos caused by Cosmos and Himawari. Himawari. Between managing Cosmos's high-maintenance, please notice me vibes and Himawari's relentless energy, his brain was begging for some peace. He wandered past the shelves, lost in thought, when Pansy, the school's nerd queen with a killer glare, appeared. Usually, Joro avoided her as she had a habit of being brutally honest and occasionally snarky, which made his ego tingle in the wrong way. This time, however, Pansy had something serious things to share. She revealed that she knew everything about Joro's secret agreements with Himawari and Cosmos. She had been quietly observing him, gathering evidence, and apparently cataloging it like some kind of romantic surveillance operation. Joro froze. He wasn't sure whether to panic, faint, or apologize for being such a ridiculous human being. Pansy continued, explaining that she had all the evidence needed to expose him to Sunshine, his oblivious best friend. And then, just to make things even weirder, she casually mentioned that she had managed to secure the same library bench where the other girls had confessed their feelings. Joro blinked and thought, a bench? In the library? His life was officially spiraling. Pansy sat down and casually confessed that she had feelings for someone. Joro, ever hopeless, thought maybe she meant Sunshine, but now fate had some other plans. The boy she liked was actually him. Joro's chest felt like someone had dropped a piano on it, but he gently says, sorry, I can't. But before he could finish, Pansy cut him off. She wasn't fooled by his nice guy act. She wasn't in love with the facade. She liked the real Joro, the one he called his inner Giga Chad, which was news to him because he mostly thought he was a disaster magnet. Joro, losing all pretense, bluntly told her that they would never be together. But Pansy, calm as ever, clarified that she didn't want to date him. Instead, she simply wanted him to come to the library every day at lunch to talk with her. Feeling trapped and desperate to keep his secrets hidden, Joro reluctantly agreed. The following day, Himawari came up with a plan of her own. She had purchased 2 movie tickets and asked Joro to arrange a date between her and Sunshine. At this point, Joro was feeling less like a friend and more like a personal assistant/slave. He approached Sunshine and explained that he had 2 tickets to a movie he had already seen. He suggested that instead of letting the tickets go to waste, Sunshine could take Himawari along. Himawari eagerly chimed in, excited about the plan. But Sunshine, in true oblivious fashion, handed his ticket to Joro and encouraged Himawari to enjoy the movie without him. Joro panicked, quickly reminding Sunshine of his hectic baseball schedule and how he could use a break. Somehow, this worked, and Sunshine finally agreed to Himawari's invitation for Saturday. Later that same day, Cosmos approached Joro with a homemade lunch prepared for Sunshine. She asked Joro to help set up a scenario where she could have lunch with him after classes. Joro, thinking quickly, asked Sunshine to help with some student council paperwork as an excuse to get him to the council room. Cosmos nervously approached Sunshine and asked formally if he would consider having lunch on the rooftop, even as ominous storm clouds gathered overhead. Joro swooped in to emphasize how such a lunch would strengthen their budding friendship. Cosmos added that she had packed enough food for both of them, including Sunshine's favorite grilled meat. But as expected, Sunshine invited Joro as well. Thinking fast, Joro declined, claiming he had plans with another girl, and made a hasty exit. Once again, Joro found himself back in the library, pouring out his frustrations to Pansy. She listened and handed him some cookies she had baked, and offered advice that he should ask Sunshine if he liked anyone already. Joro realized that he had never considered the possibility that Sunshine might have feelings for someone else. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Pansy, always quick to turn situations into leverage, demanded something in return for her insights. Joro nervously asked what she wanted, and after a moment, she suggested that he take the responsibility for organizing this year's student council library inspection. Reluctantly, he agrees, recognizing that it was a small price to pay for Pansy's guidance. Later that day, Joro needed to know if Sunshine had feelings for someone, so he barged into middle of his basketball practice. Upon asking, Sunshine blushed and fidgeted like he'd just been asked to solve a calculus problem on live TV. Seeing his friend's discomfort, Joro suggested they move somewhere quieter. The courtyard seemed safe enough. They took a seat on the infamous PTSD bench, a place that had witnessed too many of Joro's emotional disasters. There, Sunshine finally confessed that he had feelings for Pansy. He told Joro about a moment a year ago, after a crushing baseball loss, when Pansy had found him in tears. Her words of comfort had made him feel safe being vulnerable for the first time, and that had left a mark. Sunshine hoped Joro could be his wingman, but Joro, feeling a little betrayed by life itself, waved off the idea. Wait, what do you even see in that nerd? Joro asked, but Sunshine sighed and shifted the conversation to baseball. Back on school grounds, Joro's brain short-circuited from all the complicated situation. He immediately called Pansy, asking her to meet him in the corridor for advice. With a furrowed brow, he bluntly asked her opinion opinion about Sanchan, catching her off guard. Pansy bluntly told him that she only wanted to be with Joro alone. However, Joro suggested that maybe Sanchan would be a better match for her. This provoked a reaction straight out of a comedy anime. Pansy swatted his hand, turning heads as she made it crystal clear that she didn't want romance. She just wanted him to talk with her and continue baking cookies for him. Before Joro could recover, Sanchan appeared, completely misreading the situation. He assumed Joro had betrayed him by secretly pursuing Pansy, and his expression looked like he was ready to explode. Thankfully, Pansy intervened, clarifying that Joro was there strictly for student council business about the upcoming library inspection. Sanchan, still skeptical, looked unconvinced. But Pansy elaborated, explaining that her agitation came from worrying that the library might close due to low foot traffic. With her glare sharp enough to cut steel, she stomped off, accidentally dropping her bag of cookies on the floor. Joro stared, wondering if the universe had intentionally made him a magnet for emotional chaos. Later that evening, utterly drained, Joro collapsed onto his bed, hoping for a moment of peace. Of course, peace was a myth. His phone buzzed with a text from Cosmos, asking him to meet her immediately. He arrived at the restaurant, anxiety gnawing at him, only to find Cosmos sulking in a corner booth. With a heavy heart, she explained that Sanchan had asked her to use her leadership skills to help him win over Pansy. Joro slumped back in his chair, realizing that in the game of high school romance, where he thought he was the unlucky, emotionally exhausted side character, turns out that somehow he was expected to play coach, wingman, and peacekeeper all at once. Sakura's words hit Joro like a train. She accused him of betrayal, telling him to get out of her life if lying had been his intention. Before he could even open his mouth to defend himself, she abruptly stood up and walked away, leaving Joro frozen and emotionally flattened. The next day, Joro was summoned by Himawari too, who unleashed yet another round of accusations. Apparently, Sanchan had approached her too, requesting to help to win over Pansy, and now she blamed Joro for meddling behind her back. He tried to apologize for not being upfront about Sanchan's true intentions, but his words only made things worse. Himawari broke down in tears and stormed off, slamming the door behind her and telling him to stay out of her life. Next day, Joro arrived at school weighed down by loneliness. He had lost both Cosmos and Himawari, and every step felt heavy. Lost in thoughts, he barely noticed Sanchan catching up to him. Seeing Joro's mood, Sanchan offered a reassuring shoulder and quietly told him that he is there if he needed to vent. As Sanchan walked away, Joro's phone buzzed. It was a message from Pansy, summoning him to the library. When he arrived, Pansy immediately revealed that she knew everything that had happened with Sanchan, Himawari, and Cosmos. Joro felt his frustration was boiling over. He was on the verge of snapping when, suddenly, the library door swung open. Cosmos, Himawari, and Sanchan each stormed toward him like he was the main culprit of their sorrows. Sanchan started by accusing Joro of lying about not knowing Pansy, while Himawari and Cosmos also accused him of betrayal. Overwhelmed and cornered, Joro finally snapped. He unleashed all the pent-up rage he had been holding in for weeks. He shouts at both girls, "Go to hell. Unlike Sanchan, your anger is completely misplaced. I've worked Maya off for all of you, even when you were practically useless without me, and yet I'm always the one to blame when things go wrong. I've been nothing more than a tool to you." His outburst left the trio stunned into silence. For a moment, Joro felt a sense of satisfaction watching their guilty expressions. He thought he had cleared the air and was finally ready to sort things out with Sanchan. But Pansy interjected, questioning why he had been pushing her towards Sanchan if he truly cared about Cosmos and Himawari. Joro, still in shock, had no response. To make matters worse, Pansy revealed that he had admitted he planned to bag the girls Sanchan rejected. Now before he could defend himself, Sanchan demanded an apology from Joro and then delivered a swift punch to his face, sending him crashing into a bookshelf. Sanchan lifted him over his shoulder and warned him to stay away from the girls from now on. As he carried Joro out of the library, Sanchan confessed that he had once hoped they could be best friends for life, but after everything, he no longer wanted any association with him. Before the door closed, Pansy whispered to Joro to have faith in her, leaving him to wonder the emotional wreckage she caused. In the following days, Joro became the center of relentless gossip at school. Whispers about how he had supposedly betrayed and ruined his friends' lives echoed down every hallway. The rumor mill had been set in motion by a girl who witnessed the library confrontation and wasted no time spreading the story. Moreover, However, Cosmos fired Joro from the student council, plunging him further into a pit of loneliness and despair. One day, as he was preparing for his next class, Joro received a text from Pansy, asking him to meet her in the library for lunch. She claimed she wanted to confess her true feelings. Reluctant and from what he saw as her betrayal, he considered ignoring her, but Pansy threatened that ignoring her would make things worse, so he reluctantly headed to the library. Upon arrival, he wanted to get straight to the point, but Pansy asked him to fetch a book from the shelves. While he scanned the library, Sunchan appeared and sat down with Pansy, hidden from view. Joro ended up eavesdropping on their conversation. Pansy started by scolding Sunchan for spending every lunch in the library instead of hanging out with his friends, a move that made Joro wonder if he had accidentally wandered into a soap opera written entirely about him. Sunchan brushed off Pansy's concerns and invited her to watch him practice next time. Pansy, however, wasn't satisfied. She cornered him, demanding to know why he had been manipulating everything behind the scenes. Sunchan tried to deny her acquisition, but Pansy wasn't having it. She had spent a week observing him, seeing through all his schemes, and now she accused Sunchan of deliberately exploiting Himawari and Cosmos's feelings to manipulate Joro into helping, only to set him up for failure. Apparently, Sunchan's plan had been if Joro refused to assist with his romantic pursuits, Sunchan would enact revenge by enlisting Cosmos and Himawari to help him, all while revealing Joro's knowledge of their feelings to further sabotage him. Joro, listening from a hidden spot, sank into despair. Betrayed by his best friend of decades, the weight felt crushing. Meanwhile, Pansy kept pressing Sunchan to explain why he had betrayed Joro. Sunchan finally admitted that it all went back to middle school. Back then, a girl he liked had asked him to set her up with Joro. Despite his efforts to win her over, she ended up falling for Joro, who barely even noticed her. Sunchan had tried to expose Joro's flaws, but her feelings remained unchanged. Now Sunchan bluntly asked Pansy if she liked Joro and if that was why she was defending him. When she confirmed her feelings, Sunchan accepted that he had lost to Joro yet again. But he also revealed that this was the perfect opportunity for revenge. Joro had unknowingly put himself in the same vulnerable position Sunchan had faced in middle school. He knew he could manipulate the girls because they were infatuated with Joro. Curious, Sunchan asked Pansy why she liked Joro despite his flaws. Pansy explained that Joro was genuinely kind-hearted. Even while helping the girls, his main concern had always been Sunchan's happiness. That selflessness and his willingness to prioritize others over his own desires was why she could never care for Sunchan the way she cared for Joro. She shared a story from last year's baseball tournament. Before meeting Sunchan, she had seen Joro waiting near the exit, holding Sunchan's favorite dish under the scorching sun, enduring ridicule from others without a hint of jealousy. Even today, he acted selflessly, always putting Sunchan's happiness above his own. That kindness and selflessness were what Pansy loved about him. Sunchan's anger flared as he pointed out that the library was empty during lunch, hinting at a veiled threat. But Pansy remained calm, confident that she didn't need to flee because she trusted Joro would come to her aid. At that cue, Joro emerged from his hiding spot, confronting Sunchan directly. Seeing Joro, Sunchan froze. Joro acknowledged Sunchan's earlier comment about Himawari and Cosmos, agreeing that they had been misguided in how they treated him. Sunchan nervously tried to laugh it off, but Joro tightened his grip on his shoulder, warning him not to belittle the girl's feelings. Then, grabbing him by the collar and lifting him slightly off the ground, Joro called Sunchan out bluntly, emphasizing that the girls had put in real effort for him and that he should never exploit them. After extracting a promise to apologize and never harm them again, Joro finally let him go. As Sunchan left, Pansy approached Joro and apologized for not supporting him sooner. She leaned in to kiss him, but Joro, being the Giga Chad and on his way to become RIZZ God, pulled away. He couldn't forgive her that easily. Joro, with his usual dramatic flair, declared, "No matter what happens, when I hate someone, I'll always hate them." Pansy, unfazed as always, tilted her head and replied softly, "My prince, that's really unkind of you. You shouldn't say things like that. No matter what you do, I'll always like you." Feeling the emotional damage hit him right in the ego, Joro awkwardly turned to leave. Pansy called out, "What's wrong? Are you not going to come here anymore? Won't you visit the library again?" But Joro, being the emotionally constipated man that he is, didn't answer. He just made that classic, "I'm totally fine but actually dying inside" face and walked away. Once he left, Pansy calmly turned and called out, "You two can come out now." And Himawari and Cosmos, who had apparently been hiding nearby, walks out. The next day, Joro arrived at school, mentally preparing himself for another rough morning. He thought, "Great, can't wait to see what fresh graffiti my shoe lockers got today." But when he opened it, he froze. Cosmos was standing next to it. Startled, he asked, What are you doing here?" Cosmos didn't say a word. She just glanced at him silently and walked away. Confused, Joro looked into his locker and to his shock, his shoes were clean. No paint, no notes, no chaos. When he entered class, the surprises kept coming. Himawari was sitting at his desk, telling everyone, nobody's writing anything bad about Joro's seat ever again. Joro, nearly tearing up like it was some kind of redemption arc, smiled and sat down, thinking maybe, just maybe life was finally turning around. That's when Sunchan suddenly stood up and says, everyone, I've got something to say. Joro watched as Sunchan bowed deeply before the class and confessed everything, every dumb mistake he'd made, every lie, everything he did wrong. But notably, he never mentioned Himawari or Cosmos by name. He wanted to protect their privacy. Later, Joro visited Pansy to tell her what happened and how Sunchan apologized in front of everyone. Joro said, he told them everything but didn't drag the girls into it. Pansy smiled faintly and says, you really came here just to tell me that? Isn't that a bit much? Joro crossed his arms and smirks, I just came here for today, that's all. Pansy's eyes softened and she asked, Joro, do you know why Sunchan fell for me in the first place? Yeah, Joro replied. After losing that match, he was depressed, and you encouraged him. Pansy chuckled and told him, oh no, I didn't do anything special. I just told him my name. Joro frowned and asked, wait, what do you mean by that? Pansy smirked. Give me 2 minutes, and I'll show you. Then without hesitation she started unbuttoning her shirt. Joro's brain went into panic mode. Wait, I'm not ready for this at all. As she removed her outer layer, Joro froze. Her long hair fell, and her features became clearer. That's when it hit him, she was the same girl he'd seen outside the school during that baseball event. Wait, how can that be you? He blurted out. Pansy smiled mysteriously and says, forget about that. Tell me, are you really not going to come to the library anymore? Joro looked away and says, no, I'm not. Without warning, Pansy leaned in and kissed him softly on the cheek and Joro immediately turned tomato red and speechless. I only do that, Pansy said calmly, to someone I truly like, someone who thinks of others before himself. Consider that your reward, Joro. Joro stammered. That doesn't change the fact that I'll still hate you. Pansy chuckled, brushing her hair back she mutters, the more you hate me, the more I'll love you. Then, with a bittersweet smile, she added, I get lonely easily, so I really need affection. And now the story came full circle, starting again with Pansy and Joro meeting in the library. Joro sighed, I've been coming here every day because you asked me to, but now, I think it's time you give me what you promised. Pansy smiled calmly and said she was glad Joro asked about that. Without saying anything she lifted her shoe toward him and told him to lick it. Joro blinked in shock and asked what the hell she was talking about. Pansy teased him saying it was his favorite thing, right? Joro looked disgusted and told her no way, he actually preferred her balloons more, and asked why she didn't show that side of her now since he was getting bored of this glasses girl act. Pansy frowned and said that she didn't know he was that kind of person and that she was really disappointed in him. Joro snapped back saying he was tired of seeing her face every day and didn't want to look at this bespectacled version anymore. Pansy sighed and told him she dressed this way because she was hiding from a demon. Joro looked completely confused and told her to hold up because she couldn't just drop a demon backstory out of nowhere in a rom-com anime like it was a normal school drama. Ignoring his outburst, Pansy continued saying that although she liked that he came to the library every day, but lately he had been ignoring some people and shouldn't spend all his time in library. Joro told her that he came daily because he promised to her, so there shouldn't be any problem. Pansy shook her head and said she didn't think he was coming for her but instead to avoid certain people, and asked how long he planned on running away from them. Joro replied coldly that those people had nothing to do with him anymore. Pansy told him he didn't have to do much and just needed to tell them how he really felt, and once he did, they would come back to him as friends. Joro turned away and said he didn't want to talk to them. Pansy reached out and grabbed his hand and Joro told her to let go, saying he hated her. She smiled faintly and said the thing she liked about him was that he was always honest and that's why he should be honest with them too. She told him to tell them how he really felt and that he would feel lighter afterward. She added that it's better to have real friends in school than to pretend to be fine being alone. Joro sighed and said fine, but if he tried to fix things then she would also have to make some effort to make new friends instead of stalking him in the library every day. Pansy chuckled softly but didn't argue. Joro grabbed one of her cream puffs and started eating it while she quietly watched him. Before leaving she asked if it was good and he smirked, saying yeah, now he had another reason to come there. Later that day in class, Joro was approached by a girl named Hina Hitachi, who was also known as Ashuro, the school reporter. She told him she wanted to talk about the flower festival. Joro asked what kind of festival it was and she explained that it was the main event of their school where one boy danced with 3 girls and in the end chose one of them as his future bride. Joro laughed and said that sounded like a public dating show with extra steps. Hina smiled and asked him who he was planning to pick, and Joro said he hadn't decided yet but thought she might be one of them. Hina blushed and said no one had ever chosen her before. Joro grinned and told her now she knew knew what it felt like to taste her own medicine. Later, Himawari was struggling with her homework and Hina offered to help her figure it out. Just then Joro showed up, and the moment Himawari saw him, she froze like she had seen a ghost. Before Joro could say a word, she panicked and ran straight down the stairs but tripped halfway and fell. Joro rushed to her side and asked if she was okay. Himawari glared at him, saying if he hadn't grabbed her, she wouldn't have fallen in the first place. Himawari looked away and said softly to let her go since she had already caused him enough trouble. She added that she had already apologized but still thought he was such a big jerk. Joro sighed and said that was exactly why he wanted to apologize to her too. After a bit of awkward back and forth where they traded a few light insults, they ended up laughing it off and becoming friends again. A while later, Joro found himself facing Sunchan once more, but this time for a completely different reason. Sunchan crossed his arms and asked what kind of trick Joro was trying to pull this time. Joro tells him that he wanted to challenge him in studying. If Sunchan passed the midterms, he would win, but if he failed, Joro would. Sunchan frowned and said he had no interest in such a dumb challenge and started to leave, but Himawari quickly stepped in front of him and told him to at least listen to what Joro had to say. Sunchan refused again, saying he didn't want any part of it and tried to walk away. Watching him leave, Joro thought sadly that maybe he and Sunchan would never be friends again. But then Pansy's words echoed in his head that if he was honest with his friends and told them the truth, things would eventually get better. Taking a deep breath, Joro called out to Sunchan and said he didn't care about pride anymore. All he wanted was to be friends again. Sunchan stopped for a moment, turned around, and again after a bit of snarky back and forth, both of them finally laughed and shook hands like old times. And even Sunchan apologized for everything. Meanwhile, Himawari was doing some weird victory dance in the corner like she had just solved world peace, and somewhere across campus Cosmos was acting all cool and mysterious as if she had completely forgotten about the chaos that had happened before. After school, Joro headed to the library where Pansy was waiting for him. She took one look at him and smiled, saying he seemed unusually cheerful. Joro nodded proudly and said everything went well. He was friends again with Himawari and Sunchan. But then his tone turned serious as he told her he had something urgent to ask. Pansy tilted her head and told him to go ahead. Joro asked what she really thought about Himawari and Sunchan. Pansy smirked slightly and said she already knew what he was getting at. He wanted her to help them study. She said she might consider it if someone had enough free time to take her out for a fun date first. Joro instantly got the hint and said fine, he'd take her out. Pansy smiled and said that since they were already talking about studying, there was still one more open spot in their study group. Joro frowned and asked what she meant since everyone was already there. Pansy smiled mischievously and said the last person was already watching them right now. When Joro turned to look, he saw Cosmos standing nearby burning with jealousy. When he followed her gaze, he saw her sitting by the stairs alone, crying quietly. She whispered to herself that Joro had made up with Himawari and Sunchan but hadn't come to see her. She felt like he had completely forgotten her. Joro froze as he realized she had been watching him all along. She held a small apology letter she had written, along with notes on how she was planning to make things right, but he had never come to her. She muttered that maybe Joro didn't care about her anymore. Joro immediately stepped closer and said that wasn't true at all. He told her he cared about her deeply and reminded her of the saying, "We save the best for last." Cosmos, tears still in her eyes, looked at him and said he was lying. She told him that if he really cared, he would have spoken to her in her style, not like this awkward stranger standing in front of her. So Joro says, "All right then," and starts talking in the same dramatic tone as before, trying to act all cool. He says he's here to fix things between the two of them and even apologizes. Finally, the tension drops and everything's good again. Next thing you know, the group shows up at the library for a study session. Joro apologizes again like, "Bro, how many times are you going to say sorry?" Pansy tells him not to worry, as everything's fine now. Cosmos adds that she knew they'd have to study and had already prepared everything in advance. Then Himawari jumps in saying she's heard Cosmos always tops her class and that she really respects her. Cosmos, being humble as ever, says it's nothing like that, and if Himawari studies properly, she could top her class too. Then Cosmos casually drops a bomb. "I've prepared about 5,000 practice problems for today." Everyone's faces immediately turn into windows shutting down sounds. Sweat starts pouring faster than Joro's excuses. Pansy then offers to help Himawari with modern Japanese, and Joro's just sitting there like, what am I supposed to do now? Even my brain's buffering. But when he looks at Sunchan, he realizes that the poor guy's already spiritually prepared to leave this world. And a bit later, after they're done studying, all of them head home together, chatting and laughing. Sunchan tells Joro, "I gave my best. Now let's see what kind of reward we get tomorrow." Then Joro, being Joro, starts staring at the girls like a background NPC with too much free time. Pansy catches him and says, "Why are you looking at us like that? You're not having dirty thoughts, are you?" Joro panics, No, I was just looking that way, you just happened to be in between. Himawari laughs and says, you know, I think I'll score better than you in this midterm. I'm way smarter. Joro fires back. That's not happening. I'll beat you no matter what. And then they all walk off together. But nah, that's not the end. Joro suddenly starts narrating like it's a drama ending scene, saying, now that all my friends are together, I realize something. Such beautiful girls are right in front of me, and I'm not doing anything. If I just make a move, I could finally live my dream. My school harem life dream could be true. I can't let this chance slip away. At that exact moment, the girls yell, hey, Joro, what are you daydreaming about? If you don't hurry up, we're leaving without you. Joro, completely defeated, mumbles, yeah, I should at least enjoy these days while they last. After few days, we see Joro walking to school when Himawari shows up out of nowhere and slaps his back so hard that it could power a small generator. Joro was in pain, but she's all smiles, thanking him for helping her study since she passed her exams with great marks. Joro says, before thanking me, maybe apologize first? You nearly broke my spine. But she just hugs him, and suddenly Joro's pain magically disappears. Bro's heart rate went from 60 to 160 in 1 second. Later, in class, Joro gets a message from Cosmos asking if they can meet, and now he's overthinking like it's a full rom-com. Why does she want to see me? Is this it? Am I finally the protagonist? But before he can finish his fantasy, Asunaro shows up and says, can you come with me for a minute? I have something to tell you. Now Joro's convinced she's in love with him too. Man's delusion levels are officially over 9,000. They head to the rooftop, where Asunaro says she's curious about him. Joro's eyes light up like a Christmas tree. He was thinking, she's totally fallen for me. My harem arc is real. But then, that cursed bench appears again. Joro freezes. Why does this bench keep haunting me? Every time I sit on it, my life falls apart. Asunaro asks him to sit beside her so she can talk properly. Nervous and sweating, he sits down, and she starts saying, you know, whenever I think about that person, my heart starts beating faster. And Joro's like, oh no, here we go again. Bench-kun, please spare me this time. Asunaro looks straight at Joro, her eyes filled with determination, and drops the bomb. That person is you, Joro. For a second, Joro can't even breathe. His brain's buffering like a cheap Wi-Fi router. Before he can even come up with an excuse, Asunaro continues, absolutely wrecking him without mercy. She says, you're a terrible person, a lowlife, and the greatest enemy of women. Right now, you're targeting Himawari, President Cosmos, and Pansy at the same time. Joro stands there thinking, wait, what? How does she even know about that? That's not even reality yet. His future crimes are being exposed before they've even happened. Asunaro explains how it all began. During the final baseball game, while I was cheering for everyone, I saw you. Your eyes weren't on the match. They were glued to one girl's plot armor. You kept staring like a wild animal that just spotted prey. Joro's soul practically leaves his body as she adds, your face looked disgusting, like you were about to devour her right there. My point is, you have absolutely no morals. Joro tries to defend himself, mumbling, you got any proof of that? She smirks and replies, oh, I do, and shows him photos of him with Himawari, Pansy, and Cosmos, all taken at the most suspicious angles possible. Joro starts sweating like he's in an interrogation room. No, it's not what it looks like. Those pictures are totally misunderstood. Asunaro crosses her arms and says, men like you are all the same. Lovebirds trying to chase multiple women at once. But don't worry, I'll handle this professionally. I'm going to publish an article about you in the school newspaper. Joro immediately panics. That's not true. Please, don't do that. You can even stay with me and see how innocent the first am. She calmly replies, as a journalist, I don't spread false information. So, from today until the flower festival, I'll be observing you. If you're innocent, I'll publish an article clearing your name. I trust that's fine with you, right, Joro? Thanks in advance. And just like that, Asunaro officially becomes his personal FBI agent. Joro's inner thoughts were in pure chaos. No way. If I don't clear my name soon, my reputation's going down faster than my test scores. As he was busy panicking about his stalker journalist, Cosmos arrives just like they had planned earlier. She tells him that she's got the list of people who'll be participating with him in the flower festival event. On the list are 3 girls, Cosmos herself, Himawari, and a first-year student named Kimi Kamada. Joro looks at the screen and realizes what this means. Wait a second, this is that festival where one guy dances with 3 girls, right? Cosmos nods and smiles. And by the way, the guy usually ends up marrying one of the girls afterward. She smiles even wider, and Joro panics. Hey, don't smile at me like that. Cosmos then grabs his hand and says softly, let's both do our best. Joro blushes so hard his soul nearly leaves his body. Yeah, I'll try my best too, he mutters, trying not to melt on the spot. Meanwhile, Asunaro was busy writing everything down like she's documenting a criminal case. Her notes basically read, subject is emotionally unstable in front of Cosmos. Appears skilled at deceiving women. Joro can literally feel her eyes on his back. She was watching him like a hawk waiting for him to blink wrong. Trying to escape the awkwardness, Joro goes to the other girls and politely asks, can you all please leave me alone for a bit? But of course, fate doesn't work that way for him. The girls refuse and say that they'll stay by his side no matter what. Himawari even says that they need to be together to prepare for the flower festival. Joro looks like he just got sentenced to life in a rom-com prison. Desperate, he runs to Sunchan for help, but Sunchan shrugs and says, sorry man, I've got baseball practice. You're on your own. Joro tries explaining to the girls that if Asunaro's article gets published, it'll ruin all their reputations. But they all look at him with smiles and say they don't care what people think. That's when Joro loses it and says, fine, but from now on, I'm not associating with any of you. Cosmos, still completely unfazed, smiles and says, what a perfect opportunity. Before our flower dance, we should get to know each other better. Let's meet our final dance partner. Joro, trying to maintain whatever dignity he has left, mutters, I have zero interest in being involved in this. Cosmos, in her usual confident tone, says, I'd be happy if you came with me. Joro immediately realizes she's manipulating him like a pro, but he still says yes because he's Joro, the guy who can't say no to pretty girls. Cosmos thanks him sweetly, saying it would make her really happy if he joined her. Joro, trying to sound cool, says, fine, but you'll owe me a favor later. She smiles and says, what kind of favor? Later, we see Joro heading to meet Kimi Kamada, the first-year girl. Of course, Asunaro was trailing behind him again, scribbling in her notebook like she's writing a biography titled The Tragic Fall of a Fake Playboy. Cosmos greets Asunaro politely and suggests they go meet the first participant on the first floor. Asunaro asks what will happen if that girl refuses to join, and Cosmos answers that they will have to find a new member if she does. Joro goes to meet Kimi Kamada and she freezes the moment she sees him, warning him to stay away because she has heard things about him in the first years, that he has a perverse hobby of worshipping girls' shoes. Joro panics and wonders who started such a rumor and why his past keeps getting replayed like a cursed flashback while Asunaro scribbles notes calling him obsessed and pervert. Back in class, Joro learns that Kamada refused to participate and his face drops. Asunaro appears and tells him she spent the whole day with him and that because he did not act inappropriately she will not publish the article about him. She reminds him that she works for the paper and that she will keep watching him until the flower festival to make sure he stays out of trouble. Joro breathes a temporary sigh of relief and asks what will happen about the third girl. Asunaro hesitates, but before she can answer, Joro is told that they already found a third member somehow, that Cosmos somehow convinced another girl to join the flower dance. Relief turns into awkward hope and Joro mutters that this is great news. When Joro goes to the library, he finds out he will be dancing with Sue and that the school principal has already given permission. Everyone starts practicing together and Asunaro watches everything with hawk eyes while the group picks dresses and plans the choreography. 1 week before the flower festival, Joro arrives at school and Asunaro is nowhere to be seen, so he thinks her misunderstanding about him might be cleared. Later during class, a group of girls surrounds Joro, waving around printed photos that make him look like the final boss of perverts. They're giggling, whispering, and giving him that, we caught you in 4K look. Hina steps forward, trying to calm everyone down. She says that nothing is confirmed yet, and by the time of the dance festival, everything will become clear. Until then, she'll personally keep an eye on him, which sounds a lot less reassuring and a lot more like being put under house arrest with extra drama. Because of all the rumors and pressure, Joro decides to drop out of the flower dance festival. In his place, he asks Sun-chan to step in to fill the vacant spot. For a moment, Joro feels relieved and he thinks, finally, no more trouble, no more misunderstandings. But the rom-com anime gods clearly hate this man's peace. As the festival draws near, Teo comes running to Joro, looking desperate. He explains that his family doesn't approve of him participating in the dance, so he's forced to withdraw. Joro's soul visibly leaves his body. With no other choice, he steps back in as the replacement dancer. When Hina hears this, she sighs and warns him, fine, you can participate, but stay away from the girls. Joro looks like a dog that just got told to guard a steak but not eat it. Yeah, sure, I'll stay away, he says, knowing full well Destiny's about to mess him up again. At that moment, Cosmos arrives, and the air immediately turns heavy. The three of them stand together, and she looks Hina straight in the eye and says, I can't let you participate in this dance. All these rumors about Joro are your doing, aren't they? Himawari and I both know why you did this. You wanted to turn all the girls against him, so you'd be the only one left for him to dance with. Hina's eyes tremble, and she finally admits, yes, that's true. I've liked Amatsuyu for a long time. I just couldn't stand seeing him with anyone else. Cosmos glares at her, half furious and half disappointed says, but the way you went about this was completely wrong. You hurt people for your own feelings. Hina's voice breaks as she apologizes. Tears were welling up in her eyes and she says, I'm sorry, Joro. I love you, please forgive me. But Joro, remembering how much trouble her actions caused, replies sharply, I can't forget what you did to me. Hina trembles, on the verge of crying. She says softly, then I'll fix everything please, just give me a chance to make things right. Cosmos, calming down, tells her, that would be the best decision you could make. Hina leaves quietly, wiping her tears, and Cosmos turns to Joro. Now, she says with a soft smile, you can participate in the dance festival with us without any worries. Finally, the day of the flower dance festival arrives. First, he dances with Aoi, also known as Himawari. During their dance, she asks casually, so, Joro, do you like anyone? He instantly goes full defensive mode and says, no, not at all. I don't like anyone. Classic Joro, surrounded by goddesses yet acting like he's allergic to romance. After Aoi, Cosmos comes up on stage for her turn. They dance gracefully, and midway through, she suddenly leans in and kisses Joro on the cheek. The entire audience was shocked, and Joro's face turns redder than a tomato on fire. He was malfunctioning like a Windows XP computer trying to handle modern software. Then comes the final dancer, the most beautiful and dazzling Pansy. As she steps onto the stage, everyone was stunned by how beautiful she looked. Even Joro's internal monologue stops roasting him for a second. As they dance, she looks into his eyes and asks, how do I look? Blushing like he's about to pass out, Joro stammers, you look really beautiful. Pansy smiles gently, clearly happy to hear it. For once, things actually go well for him, a miracle in itself. After the dance, the girls laugh and chat together, saying how much fun they had. The festival ends on a high note. The next morning, Joro's mom calls him from the kitchen and says, your friend is here to see you. Joro, half asleep, asks, who? And nearly falls over when his mom says, that nice girl, I met her at the market and invited her for breakfast. Joro rushes out, completely shocked, only to find Pansy sitting calmly at the table, drinking tea like she's been part of the family for years. They all eat breakfast together, chatting like old friends. Joro's mom clearly adores her, and Joro's just sitting there dying inside, wondering how his life turned into a sitcom. The next day at school, some of the girls who had spread the earlier rumors approached Joro and apologized for everything. Hina had apparently confessed and explained the truth, clearing his name. For the first time in weeks, Joro can breathe again. He's finally free from the drama, or so he thinks. Just then, a new transfer student walks into class. Her name is Nico, a cheerful, confident girl with striking features. Without hesitation, she walks right up to Joro, takes his hand, and kisses it saying, I'm indebted to you. The entire class freezes, and Joro's brain goes straight into panic mode. But he recognizes her instantly. Then again, we see a flashback of the same basketball match which changed everything last year. After Joro's team lost the basketball match, he stopped by a small snack shop that was about to close down. The owner's daughter, this same girl, Nico, had been upset about their failing business. Joro gave her a few encouraging words, telling her not to give up. Apparently, that 5-minute pep talk changed her entire life. Now she's back as his new classmate. Then we see the girls immediately start giving her the side-eye. Their jealousy levels were just hitting overdrive. Joro, meanwhile, was trying to figure out why this girl transferred to his class and what she wants from him. Do you need any help or something? He asks awkwardly. Nico smiles and replies, no, I don't need anything right now, which in anime language means she totally does. Later that day, Joro runs into Nico again in the library. She introduces herself to his friends and joins them for lunch. Cosmos, Himawari, and Pansy all observe her like suspicious cats meeting a new kitten. Cosmos had even brought lunch for Joro, but when she sees Nico sitting next to him, she quietly decides not to give it to him. After lunch, Pansy pulls Joro aside and gives him a piece of advice only a true observer could deliver and says, don't get too close to girls. You have this strange strange power, she might end up falling for you. Joro just sighs deeply, thinking, yeah right, if that's true, then why does my life still feel like a survival game? Later one day, while Joro, our walking magnet for misunderstandings, was carrying a book Pansy lent him back to the library, when someone suddenly hugs him from behind, full of energy as always, and she cheerfully announces, "Hey, my birthday is coming up soon." Completely caught off guard, Joro stammers, "Oh, why are you telling me this? What exactly am I supposed to do about it? Like, bro, her birthday isn't a side quest you can skip," but he acts like it's a boss fight he didn't sign up for. That evening, Joro checks his bag and realizes with horror that the book Pansy lent him was missing. He instantly panics and rushes back to the place he fell in the middle of the night like a detective in a secondhand anime drama. Their two girls from another school help him search every corner of the footpath until they finally find it. The book was completely soaked and ruined. The book looked like it just came back from a shipwreck. Now, just as expected from Joro's luck, the book turned out to be an expensive and rare edition. Feeling responsible, Joro decides he'll get a part-time job to buy a new copy. Just as he was stressing over it, Nico appears like a cheerful NPC and says, "My father's shop needs a part-time worker. If you want, you can work there." Without a second thought, Joro accepts. Man didn't even blink. That's how desperate he was to fix his mess. Later, he shows the damaged book to Pansy and apologizes. But being her usual calm, kind self, she says, "It's all right. You don't need to work part-time for this." Of course, Joro insists, "No, I want to do it," which is code for, "I'm too guilty to sit still." He starts working under Nico's father and tries his best to be a responsible, hardworking guy for once. The next day, while heading home, he bumps into Himawari, who notices the exhaustion written all over his face and asks, "Why don't you just buy a new book instead of doing all this?" But instead of answering, Joro changes the topic completely and starts talking about her upcoming birthday. Then one day at work, Joro accidentally drops something on a customer, leading to a mini disaster. His boss scolds him harshly, and our boy gets demotivated instantly. Feeling down, he walks home under the streetlights, and of course, that's when our main heroine Pansy appears, trying to cheer him up. But Joro, in his full, main character with mood swings, mode, vents his frustration at her and storms off. Dude, she was literally just trying to help. The next day, while wandering aimlessly, Joro meets a guy named Hazuki, who strikes up a conversation. The two quickly become friends, and Hazuki gives him some words of encouragement that actually lift his mood. Joro feels like someone finally understands him, which, let's be honest, is a rare event in his cursed romantic life. The following day, Joro apologizes to Pansy for his behavior and says, "I'm sorry for taking my anger out on you." She smiles softly and replies, "It's okay, don't worry about it." Slowly, with time, he becomes better at his job, and even the customers who were angry at him before start to appreciate his hard work. Eventually, Joro receives his salary and runs out, excited to finally buy the new book for Pansy. But just as he's about to head to the store, Aoi shows up with a big smile and hands him, you guessed it right, the exact same book. For a few seconds, Joro freezes. Then his brain crashes and he shouts, "I worked so hard for this. Why did you buy it too?" He was clearly frustrated. Himawari's eyes also well up with tears, and she runs off crying. The entire world collectively sighs. Classic Joro moment. Realizing his mistake, he felt guilty. Himawari was just trying to help him, not make him feel bad. The next day was Aoi's big tennis match. Joro and the others go to the stadium to cheer her on. The tension was high and the crowd was roaring, and Himawari gives it her all to the match. After the match, she runs straight toward Joro, blushes deeply, and kisses him on the cheek. Seeing this, everyone around them was shocked. The man who once said, "I don't like anyone," just unlocked romantic chaos level 2. Seeing this, the other girls Cosmos, Pansy, and Nico all exchanged jealous glances. Their expressions basically screamed, "Okay, now it's war." But before Joro can even process the fact that he just got kissed, another crisis hits. Pansy receives a notice that the school library, her sanctuary, and the group's hangout spot is being shut down due to lack of members. Shocked by the notice, everyone decides to save the library. They start brainstorming plans to attract new members. Later that evening, while heading home, Joro runs into Hazuki again. Realizing that his new friend might be able to help, he asks for his assistance and Hazuki agrees with a confident smile. The next day, everyone waits outside the school for Hazuki to arrive. When he finally shows up, he brings along two girls, the same ones who had previously helped Joro find his lost book. Once inside the library, Hazuki introduces himself to everyone. But Pansy freezes on the spot because, as it turns out, Hazuki was her admirer back in middle school. The reunion hits hard. Hazuki was also thrilled thrilled to see her again, still carrying that middle school crush flame like a loyal puppy, while Pansy feels visibly uncomfortable. She quickly excuses herself and walks away, leaving Joro completely confused about what just happened. As Joro tries to make sense of things, a girl from the group asks him straight up, "Do you like Pansy?" He immediately denies it because of course he does. Meanwhile, everyone else begins decorating the library to make it more inviting and recruit more members. The next day, Cosmos, Aoi, and Joro have lunch with the two new girls. During their chat, the girls casually drop a truth bomb. They both like Hazuki, but he's still in love with Pansy from middle school. Their plan was to help him confess his love and finally start a relationship with her. Hearing this, Joro's jaw nearly hits the table. He was jealous, like visibly jealous, even though he keeps pretending he's not. Later, he talks to Pansy about it, and she explains that back in middle school, she was so popular that tons of boys confessed to her. To avoid the unwanted attention, she deliberately changed her appearance in high school with glasses, braids, and a quiet personality so no one would bother her anymore. Trying to finally end the tension with Hazuki, Pansy suddenly decides to accept Sun-chan's fake proposal. She thought that by doing this, Hazuki will finally move on. But of course, this only makes Joro even more restless and confused. The library starts gaining new members thanks to everyone's efforts, but the awkward love tangle between Pansy, Hazuki, and Joro still lingers. One day, Tao happily tells Joro, "Hey, Pansy accepted my proposal." Joro freezes like a statue. Nico notices his reaction and encourages him. "It's not too late. If you love her, then go confess before it's too late." Motivated by her words, Joro charges into Pansy's fan club room like a man on a mission. Inside, Hazuki and the others were there. Without hesitation, Joro looks Hazuki dead in the eye and asks, "Do you still like Pansy?" Hazuki smiles confidently and says, "Yes, I like her a lot." That's when Joro declares, "Then let's settle this. Whoever loses this challenge will never talk to Pansy again." Everyone was shocked by his sudden confession. Pansy herself was shocked but secretly happy that Joro is finally showing his true feelings. The challenge was that the girls have to decide who Pansy should be with by giving either Hazuki or Joro the most hair barrettes. On top of that, whichever high school wins the upcoming regional baseball finals gets one extra vote. Yazero romance, sports, and hair accessories. Peak rom-com anime logic. Joro was confident that all his friends will support him, but when voting time comes, he's left speechless because all the girls Cosmos, Aoi, and Hina give their barrettes to Hazuki. They smirk and say, "We like you too, Joro. We won't let Pansy win so easily." And that's when our dense hero realizes the brutal truth that he somehow rizzed every girl around him, and all of them have caught feelings for him now. He's standing there, surrounded by chaos, love, and emotional damage, wondering how his simple school life turned into a full-blown dating simulator. And that's where season 1 of this anime wraps up with Pansy blushing and Joro internally screaming. See you next time with another hilarious anime recap.